Sorry about that, there was some technical issue. So I'm going to start the speech again, all right? Excuse the voice. I'd like to welcome everybody to this hybrid meeting of the General Licensing Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and will be available to view online now and in the future. May I remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011, excuse me, and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending the meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at the meetings. I've had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Members in the chamber, please be aware that we are all on camera and that you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Okay? Thanks everybody for that. We'll now move on to the agenda. Item 1 is attendance and apologies. Have we got any apologies?
We do, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Liam Cowles.
Okay. Anybody else? I think we're all here. Yeah. Right. Next one is item 2, which is declarations of interest. Members, do you have any interest to declare? Anybody? No? Nobody? That's great. Thank you. We then move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting on the 27th of 06/24, pages 3 to 6. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as approved. Anybody got anything they would like to raise or no? So we're all happy to approve them? Yeah. Great, thank you. We'll then move on to item 4, which is the updated on licence testing arrangements. Now that's on page 7 to 44. So I will ask, could somebody like to prepare the report, Robin? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The only report for consideration by the General Licensing Committee today provides an update on the testing arrangements for Hackney carriages and private hire vehicles. So as the committee will no doubt recall, the Council's policy on the administration and regulation of Hackney carriage and private hire licences sets out that licensed vehicles and new vehicles that are looking to become licensed need to be tested on behalf of the council by an appointed garage at preset intervals. Those are from when the vehicle turns 1 year old, they're required to be tested at 6-monthly intervals. When a vehicle reaches 8 years old, they're required to be tested 3 times a year, so at 4-monthly intervals. And those requirements are set out in the council's policy. So that's section 4 of the policy for private hire vehicles and section 6 of the policy for Hackney carriages. And just for the committee's reference, those extracts from the policy are included in Appendix 1 and 2 of the report, which I understand are on pages 8 to 20 of the agenda pack. So the compliance test that vehicles are required to undergo in accordance with the policy, a higher standard test than the standard MOT, because the compliance test includes a check of compliance with licence conditions, which includes that the licence plates and council draw signs are fitted to the vehicle, the first aid kit is in the vehicle, and no smoking signage is displayed in each compartment of the vehicle. Officers do ad hoc inspections as well, periodically throughout the lifetime of the licence, but the testing arrangements at the preset intervals ensure that all vehicles are tested regularly. So the vehicles that we don't see as officers when we're out and about doing enforcement, we at least know they are tested twice or 3 times a year. Now the Council is the holder of a certificate of exemption issued under Regulation 6 of the Motor Vehicles Test Regulations 1981 as amended. And that means that the council's approved garage may issue a certificate of compliance to any licensed vehicle, and that vehicle is then exempt from the requirement to possess an MOT certificate. However, the exemption only applies when the vehicle has a current vehicle licence issued by the council, and when the vehicle licence expires, the vehicle is again required to have an MOT, as any other unlicensed vehicle would be required to do. Up until February this year, the council had one appointed garage that was carrying out testing on behalf of the council. As the committee may recall, on the 16th of February, the council terminated the contract with that garage. On the same date, the council's chief executive approved interim arrangements to allow deviation from the policy until the matter was brought before the committee. The committee then considered the matter in February 2024, on the 22nd of February, and resolved to extend the deviation from the policy, and that was to allow standard MOT certificate to be provided in place of a certificate of compliance. And the frequency of those were with an application to license a vehicle if it's older than 1 year old, prior to the first anniversary, the date of first registration of any vehicle that is less than 1 year old, prior to the expiry of any certificate of compliance, and then subsequently prior to the expiry of any MOT certificate. And also, if a licence had been suspended temporarily due to concerns about its fitness, then an MOT certificate would be required in those circumstances as well before the vehicle licence would be reinstated. The committee allowed the deviation from the policy for 3 months and allowed a standard MOT certificate in place of the certificate of compliance. And the reason for that was the council was going through a tendering process to appoint a new garage to carry out vehicle testing on behalf of the council. The committee met again in May, and at that point the tendering process was still ongoing, so the committee resolved to extend the temporary deviation to allow the standard MOT certificate in place of the certificate of compliance. And the effect of that was to allow Hackney carriages and private hire vehicles to remain licensed in the absence of the certificate of compliance, as there was no appointed garage to issue a certificate of compliance to any vehicle. The tendering process was carried out between February and May 2024, so earlier this year. And as part of that process, all MOT garages located in Torvine were written to and invited to bid for the contract. However, only 2 bids were received by the council, and following assessment of those 2 bids, neither garage was awarded the contract. There therefore remains no council-appointed garage to test vehicles on behalf of the council at present. Okay, so the temporary deviation from the council's policy is now expiring, as at the last meeting the committee extended it until the meeting today. So that means that from today onwards, a certificate of compliance would again be needed to be produced by vehicle proprietors when applying for licences and at the 6-monthly or 4-monthly intervals. However, there's no council-appointed garage to issue those certificates, so that means that no new vehicle may be licensed, and the licence issue in respect of any existing vehicle will need to be suspended when the current certificate of compliance expires. And that will obviously be financially detrimental to licence holders, and also with the number of licensed vehicles being available for hire being reduced over time, that will affect members of the public. So the options are that we may undertake a new tendering process to find a new garage, but it would be suggested that that would be delayed until the new year, as it would allow a gap of 6 months from the end of the last tendering process, and also that we wait until after the Christmas period. Alternatively, we could look at other arrangements, such as varying the policy and implementing a different testing regime to ensure that vehicles are safe and suitable. An example of that could be that we continue with the standard MOT test at set intervals to ensure the vehicle is safe, and then couple that with an officer inspection to ensure that vehicles comply with the council's licence conditions and policy requirements. But any such permanent change to the council's policy would require consultation with the taxi trade and general public. It's therefore recommended that the committee consider the long-term options for the testing of vehicles at its next meeting. So we propose to bring a report back to the next meeting, but extend the temporary deviation from the policy until then, as the interim measures will allow a standard MOT certificate to be provided by a vehicle proprietor in place of a certificate of compliance. the last thing to note is that whilst the council has a policy, case law has established that the policy can't fed as the council's discretion. So if the committee were minded not to extend the deviation, then each application for new licence or a review of an existing licence would be considered on its merits, and deviation on a case-by-case basis could be considered, but that would involve consideration by either the council's head of public protection and environment, the chief executive, or the council's licensing panel to decide in each individual case whether a deviation should be permitted, and that would also be time and resource intensive. So the situation is that there's currently no council-appointed garage testing on behalf of the council. So the committee needs to consider how we move it forward and if a temporary deviation is permitted. The implications associated with the report, financial and the risks, are set out within the report. But I'll now move to the recommendations, which are in section 8. And the recommendation is that in the exceptional circumstances where no council-appointed garage exists, to issue certificates of compliance to Hackney carriages and private hire vehicles. The licensing committee extend the temporary deviation from the council's policy until its next meeting, while allowing the submission of a standard MOT certificate issued by a DVSA-approved garage in place of the certificate of compliance in the circumstances set out in paragraph 8.1 of the report. So those are with an application to license a new vehicle or replace a vehicle that's older than 1 year old, provided the certificate was issued in the month prior to the application to license the vehicle being submitted to the council. Prior to the first anniversary of the date of first registration of any licensed vehicle that is less than 1 year old, and then subsequently no later than the expiry date of the MOT certificate. No later than the expiry date of any MOT certificate issued in respect of a licensed vehicle. And then lastly, prior to a licence being reinstated after it had been suspended due to concerns about its fitness or the vehicle becoming temporary licensed due to involvement in an accident. And again, where the MOT certificate must have been issued after the date of suspension or accident as applicable. And the second recommendation is that the committee agree to consider long-term options for the testing of licensed vehicles at its next meeting, which is, I believe, is due to be in November. And that's the report, Chair.
Thank you, Robin. Has any member got any questions for Robin regarding the report? I've got one. I'll have to declare an interest because I'm a DVSA tester. If we're unsuccessful in finding one in Torvine, what other options are there open for us to get some sort of testing? Would we go back to the council one with views throughout?
The council's garage was invited to bid for the contract, but they didn't submit a bid. I think in the past there's been issues with the requirement that they need to carry out repairs and also the capacity issues potentially. But that is an option. We can explore that further if the committee minded to go down that route. We could look at garages outside of Torvine, but obviously, but the setup with the garages we've had previously is that when we issue the licence plates that go on the back of vehicles and the door signs that go on the doors of the vehicles, we take them to the garage and the garage fits them onto the vehicle. So obviously we just need to be mindful that if the garage is outside of Torvine, it's not too far that it's going to, for us to go there several times a week, it's going to be take us more than sort of 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour sort of thing. So, I mean, that is an option. Situation may have changed with garages in Torvine. There might be garages now that are looking to expand their business, and there may be scope for garages that haven't previously bid for the contract to apply. So there is potential to get a new appointed garage or garages. Or the other option is that we look at alternatives. So instead of having a council-appointed garage, which some councils don't have, they rely on standard MOTs, and then officers do inspections on vehicle renewals and periodically through the lifetime of the licence. So that may be an option, but obviously there's resource implications in doing that. So that's the reason for the proposal to bring it back to the next committee. So the report will set out various options. Obviously, we can take on board any comments that the committee or any options the committee would like us to explore at this stage, and then obviously the committee consider it in November.
And come back in. Just my only concern is if we can't find anybody locally, it's going to take us a while to get somebody to take up the testing for us. So I don't want to be in a year's time, we're in the same predicament where we can't find anybody to really test.
I mean, obviously, we'd be guided by the committee, but if the committee reminded for us to go out to procurement again, I would sort of suggest that we would do it once more, and then if that isn't, if we don't find anyone, then we just look at a permanent alternative, or otherwise, in November, we look at a permanent alternative. So I think those would be the two options. Well, there might be multiple options other than going to procurement, but going out for procurement. But yeah, I wouldn't suggest that at an officer level we recommend every 6 months going out for procurement, just in the off chance that we can find a garage sort of thing.
Thank you for that, Robin. Councillor Clarkson, you've got a question for Robin?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Robin, I just wanted to have sort of a bit more information on how the interim arrangements have been working in the last couple of months, and also that if this is coming back to us in November, that you've suggested within the report and just mentioned then how we do things, and officers being involved in some of the can't think of the right word, looking at the taxis to see if they're compliant. If we have full information brought back to us in December, what the resource implication would be, so that we're in a better position to make a decision earlier rather than later. It just seems going back out to tender again without going outside of Torfaen, which is something else we may want to debate. We're going to be in the same situation next time we meet.
Yeah, sure. Of course, we'll look at the sort of time implications of doing an officer inspection, if that's one of the options, and also the cost implication of doing that. As the committee will no doubt recall from when they've considered fees in the past, the taxi licensing service should be funded by the licence fees. So that the officer inspection will need to be incorporated into the licence fees, so that we're not spending money without recovering it from the licence holders. So yeah, there will be full considerations of the implications in the next reports.
And just to come back regarding how the process has been in the last couple of months with the interim arrangements, have we come across any problems or issues?
Yeah,
any complaints?
No, apologies. We've only had really comments from the trade saying that they like the arrangements. So I think they have found it more convenient rather than just going to the one garage, that they can go to any MOT-approved garage. So there's more scope for them to get appointments at short notice and things like that. So we haven't had any negative feedback from the trades, and there haven't been any issues that we've picked up in terms of testing at a low level or anything like that. So we still, as officers, we still go out and do enforcement. We work with the DVSA, we work with the police, we pull vehicles over, do random stop check sort of thing, and inspect vehicles, and there haven't been any sort of deterioration in the standard of the vehicles to any great extent, so that there haven't been any major issues that we've picked up so far.
Great, thanks. That's what I was looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Haynes, you've got a question for Robin as well?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarity, really. When we're going out to tender, are we mail-shotting all of the garages in Torfaen, or are we relying on them to know to find and know the tendering process?
No, we sent a letter by post to all DVSA approved garages in Torfaen, so everybody would have been written to back in February this year. Unfortunately.
Lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You okay with that, Councillor Haynes? Yeah. Councillor Hawley, you've got a question for Robin as well?
Yeah, Robin. Good morning. Is there any reasoning why these garages do not want to take the tender up? Is there any issues within the tender that gives them thought of concern not to want to take the tender?
We've not really had any feedback, to be honest. People haven't contacted us to say there's particular terms of the contract that they're not happy with, or certain testing requirements that they feel they couldn't meet, but if they were changed, then they would bid for the contract. So I mean, I can speculate, but there's no particular reason that we know of that garages haven't bid for the contracts. Maybe capacity issues, maybe, I don't know, really. I can't, it's only speculation.
Thank you.
You okay with that, Councillor Nicola?
Yeah, it just kind of concerns me that nobody, if there's work to be taken by a business within Torvine, it's quite confusing that potentially don't want it, and if there is a reason why they don't want to take it, what is it?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor John Horner, you've got a question for Robin, please?
Yes, I won't mention any company names, but I've heard through the grapevine that we're having difficulty with wheelchair taxis, and that companies from Pontypool, especially on a Sunday, are covering the Cwmbran area because there's a lack down there. Is that a knock-on effect of anything to do with this testing? Is there more testing, or is that just a separate problem?
That is an issue that we are aware of. We currently have 14 licensed wheelchair accessible vehicles, which is not a huge number, and obviously there's demand for those vehicles. They're not always working, so they may not be available when people want to hire them. So it's something that we're going to be looking at with operators to see what we can do to incentivise them to make wheelchair accessible vehicles available. So, as the committee may recall from consideration of licence fees in the past, there is a discount given to a wheelchair accessible vehicle, but that hasn't necessarily encouraged a huge uptake in wheelchair accessible vehicles, unfortunately. So we are sort of giving consideration to, we'll be giving consideration to kind of what other options we could look at to kind of increase the fleet of wheelchair accessible vehicles, and also to encourage operators to make sure they're available at kind of times when would be in demand. So I don't think that's a knock-on effect. To answer the question, I don't think it's a knock-on effect from the testing arrangements as such. It's a separate issue that we're looking to address.
Is there anything you want to add to that, John?
No, thank you. It's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you both.
Right. If there's no more questions, if we move on to the recommendations, which are on page 12 and 13 of the agenda, hopefully you've read them because it's quite a long one. Are we all in agree with the recommendations? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody don't agree? Anybody abstain? Yeah. Go on, Jane.
I should have jumped in before you took the vote. Can I just clarify, even though two of us have another training, are we able to vote on these issues? Okay, thank you.
So everybody previous were all in agreement, and you're in agreement. Well, thank you for that. So it's been agreed. Item 5 then is the date of the next meeting, which is the 28th of 11th, 24. And thanks, members. That's the end of the meeting. So we're going to have a quick cuppa.